Welcome back. We're here with Gary Musich, President and CEO of Visit Atlantic City, and Dan Gallagher, Executive Director of Sports and Entertainment. Gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight. Stockton University, love it here. Economic impact, Atlantic City, Atlantic County, and throughout. Gary, hit us on that.
So I'm going to go back for a second. So if you look at, I'm going to talk a little bit about our campaign launch and how that's different from what we've done before. So right now, we talked about Visit Atlantic City as our new website and our new social media channels that we've launched January 14th on the new website. And if you look at that and you look at things you're seeing now, commercials, branding, and messaging, you see something that's a little bit different. You see things about our region. You see us talking about wineries and golf and ecotourism and Atlantic City and beaches and fishing and all these other things that encompass what we're doing here, because one of the goals is to extend your stay in Atlantic City, and the economic impact that creates is monumental. 70% of the people that stay in Atlantic City stay just for one night. Our campaign and goal is to make that 2 nights. Imagine what that does to a city like Atlantic City. Where it is now, like our group business that we track, is just what Visit Atlantic City does is over $300 million. If you look at the market, it's probably $500 to $600 million in economic impact to the city. It's about 1 million people. And if you look at how does that compare to other cities, we have some challenges. You don't have an airport here. Airport's far away. Yet we're bigger than most cities that are much bigger than us. Pittsburgh, we're comparable. We're bigger than Providence. We're bigger than Baltimore. We're bigger than Richmond. We're getting close to a city like Philadelphia. There's something to be said for that. With challenges we've had post-COVID and all these things everybody still talks about, the reality is that this is a bigger and more important part of Atlantic City's mix of business than it ever has been. Even once upon a time, and everybody, probably 95% of the rooms in Atlantic City are occupied by a gaming customer. Now it's between 55 and 60%. That changes everything. That changes why you come here, where you eat, what you do, and what you're interested in, which is why our campaign now calls for kind of a broader interest in things that are in not just Atlantic City, but Atlantic County.
Right, and when you talk about that, Dan, and I'll go to both of you on this, and I want to hear from the two of you. You said Atlantic County, but also you're going over the bridge. You mentioned Philadelphia. I mean, with the World Cup and some of these other events coming in, I mean, that's a definite, going to attract folks to Atlantic City. Am I wrong?
Take that one.
Yeah, and just to go back to Gary's point real quick, and obviously it's all about economic development, but we've done a really concerted effort towards giving back to our community as well, right? And Gary talks about this all the time. We used to go buy 50-cent water bottles and put our logo on. Instead of doing that, now we're partnering with Mud Girls to give back to the community. We're involved in the Gilda's Race or the Alzheimer's Walk, because at the end of the day, you have to give back to the community, and the community will give back to you. So we've really taken that approach head on, and instead of when we have our fam trips, when we have clients come in, we're now giving credits away to these people and having speakers come in because there's value in that. There's intrinsic value in that. And that's what I think is really separating us from what maybe our older model looked like. As you mentioned about World Cup, if you would have asked me that we'd be hosting a FIFA World Cup team in Atlantic County, I would have thought you were crazy. And not only that, we're hosting Brazil's #1 team, CR Flamengo, and they're using Stockton University here in Galloway, and then they're being housed in Atlantic City. Those kind of events really are platforms for us to get brand awareness out there. Is the economic impact always there? No, but we're getting our name out there on a world and national stage, and that has to be taken into consideration as well.
No, love it.
And I think on the World Cup issue, the average time period the travel will be in the United States is 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, and there's a lot of downtime there. The benefit of the team staying in Atlantic City is this is their home base, so they're going to stay and travel to and from. So there's significant value just in that. But now we're looking at and talking to World Cup about what events, live events, things, sponsored events, and other things that can go on, and how do we connect the visitor with that ancillary trip where you stay in Atlantic City, and because you have all this time, and you have 2 or 3 days in Atlantic City. Now we've exposed a new traveler to Atlantic City, and now our brand is out there, and now you have this domino effect of information that gets out there about somebody's experience in Atlantic City. And I think that's how Dan touched on it. We got to talk about not just the rooms and space and this, but who are we? And I think that's really important that when we talk to people that want to use the city, they get to know who they are, because it's real easy in this day and age to find this information out. Where do I want to stay? What kind of restaurants? What's the meeting space? I want to do the event. I want to do this and do that. But if you connect on that personal level, whether it's Alzheimer's or, the New Jersey hosts the biggest suicide prevention week walk in the state. Atlantic City, 3,200 people did that last year. That changes the conversation. And that's how this all kind of comes together, where now you have a common interest when you're talking to potential customers of the city, and you connect just on a different level. That's why our campaign is broadening to include these other things.
And I love it. And again, to just go back to it, the community, one of the things near and dear to my heart, what got me involved and doing what I'm doing sitting here, was just getting involved in the community. And what Dan said, and you piggybacked on it too, Gary, is so important. Not just the Atlantic City community, the Atlantic County community, and the folks that come in when you're talking about that suicide walk. I've done it several years. There are people from all over the area. And what I love as I'm sitting here talking to you, each time we sit and talk, is that you're thinking out of the box. I mean, your guys are definitely, and gals on your team are thinking out of the box, and being proactive. I mean, you're talking World Cup, you're talking numbers, that sort of thing. So that proactive, being able to foresee, but also take care of what needs to be taken care of here. Talk to about, because when you have a convention, it's not something that gets signed 6 months out, or
Not at all.
Well, you know what? So good point. So some things that we're working on. So we actually, we talk about pace. Pace is how far out the business goes, and that's the health of event and group business. We just booked a 10,000 room convention for 2032, American Bus Association. They were in Philadelphia this year. In collaboration with the state of New Jersey, we hosted a big event at the Camden Aquarium. They're going to be here in 2032, and they announced Atlantic City as their selection of that 2032 of that year for Atlantic City. So that's how far out we're looking to push business. And once upon a time, there wouldn't have been an interest in looking that far out in the city. It was a very short-term buying cycle. But we had a concentrated effort to push that out, because the further out you go with that, the higher demand and value the existing space is. And that's our approach to this right now. And as we get our name out there more, and look, the meeting business, the event business, the meeting and the sports commission business is one of the bright spots. There's a lot of bright spots in Atlantic City, but that business grew last year. It grew at 8%. Not every segment is growing right now. That's one that has grown, and it's finite and definitive. And now we're branching into the event business, which it should be a role of Visit Atlantic City. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Ennis fight. So I'm going to jump in, and I'll let Dan jump in here in a second. But there's an event that is probably the biggest fight in the past decade. Philadelphia guy, unification fight. That if handled right, and this is how the event, you got to make quick decisions on this. When the opportunity is there, you strike. From inception to completion, 2.5 weeks. In collaboration with our partners at Boardwalk Hall, we booked this fight. And now our name is all over the place. And I'm going to let Dan jump on this because he's dealing with it. Matchroom's the promoter. Dan, talk a little bit more about it.
Matchroom, so there's a history there. Gary brings up a good point when it comes to looking at pieces of business and how far out we go. Our buying cycles are usually about 18 months, right, Gary? But, we hosted DAV, Disabled American Veterans. We signed that in 2014. It just came 2 years ago, right? I didn't know where I was going to be, 8 years later. But to Gary's point, if you want to win these, whether it's a big sporting event or a big convention, you have to be nimble. You have to be able to adapt because these people want to make the decisions and they want to feel good about making the decision. That's the big part. So when you come in and you have your facts already in order and you feel confident in your decision making, that's what helps you win some of these fights. And this WBF, IBF unification fight that Gary mentioned is a partnership with Matchroom. And I think that the reason they do trust us is because we host the U.S. 9-Ball Open at Harris. So there's a history there, and there's a familiarity there that people want to do business with people that they know.
Love it. Listen, and you just touched on it. I believe it was Hopkins, the last big fight. As you know, we've been having a resurgence of stuff. Sort of, I like to call club fighting, which is great. But these big fights in the main room is something that is like any other thing that goes on in Atlantic City. I've really said, and it's been some time. And I actually got to meet Bernard that time he was here in town. Just he was walking through the pier, looking for sneakers. And one of the things he said was that Atlantic City is a fight town. And, you know, this is a guy that's fought all over the world, and I've heard it from others as well. You know, do you see, I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything like that, because I know it's hard to do, so to speak, but fights, the hall being used the way in sports and different shows as well. I mean, we get it all the time. It needs to be used more. You know, I think that there's plenty there, but yeah.
So I'd love to touch on that. So, you know, again, there's a lot of ways you can look at this. Dan said it. You have to be nimble when the opportunity comes up, and you can look at all the event business sort of the same way. When the opportunity is there to bid, you jump at it. If you don't, and you have a long process that goes through to say, can we or can't we, and where do we find the financing for it, because everything is subsidized, that's how it works, and you hope to make your money back on the P&L out of the event. We took a chance on the Ennis fight. Visit Atlantic, it's sort of out of our lane, but we said, hey, we have a shot here. If we don't, this goes to Atlanta. And it was really that simple. You did it, and you had to do it then. And there's a lot of opportunity for Atlantic City, whether it's entertainment, concerts, sporting events that Dan works on, conventions that our sales team is working on. When the bid is there and the opportunity is there, you have to be prepared to be nimble and react and have a plan in place to do it. Otherwise, somebody's right behind you to take that from you. Right. And that's what we have to be very focused on doing that going forward. And that's how we grow this business. Being nimble, having a focus on events, having a focus and plan in place, and a solicitation and being proactive about what works in Atlantic City, what works for the casino and hotel properties, and what works for expanding this new market that we're creating in Atlantic County.
And if I could jump in for a second, Gary brings up a good point. One and dones don't make sense in our business at all, right? So we want to make sure that when we do make a decision on something, it's long term. And I can tell you that in our negotiations with Matchroom, this is not going to, the plan is for it not to be one fight and go away. And you see that with all of our annual events. You know, some of these shows have been around for 20, 25 years in Adrian Phillips or in Boardwalk Hall or in the Convention Center. A lot of money, a lot of time goes into these things. So we always want to make sure they're successful for both. It has to be successful for the client, it has to be successful for the destination too.
And those relationships last for
Correct.
years. And that's how it comes back around, and why content and discussion and relationship is important, because you know, we start working on this 9-ball, what happens? There's a relationship, now we have a first shot at something else, and it turns out to be a giant fight.
Listen, can't wait till it to happen. Good to be there. And listen, one of the things that we do here on the ACMike Show here at Stockton University Comcast is put it out there live and local. We appreciate the two of you. Gary Musich, President and CEO, Visit Atlantic City. My man, Sports and Entertainment, Dan Gallagher. Thank you so much both for joining us. And we're going to continue, again, this conversation. Folks, stay right where you're at. We'll be right back.